when we're analyzing politics here in America, a lot of the time we don't look at it in the context of what's happening, in the overall globe. And what's happening in Europe, I think, is key to understanding our next move because right now, Europe is essentially volunteering to become nothing but vassal states for America and to completely devastate their entire economies. So they're fully reliant on America. So it feels like to me, we're either going to have two things happening because the economies in Europe, and we can, jump into it in a second, are, tanking so much. We're either going to have the EU ultimately break up. And then, we'll have a couple states in there that maintain their wealth and grow their wealth, or we're going to have a situation where the EU just becomes completely colonized by America. But either way, until they actually start to make peace with Russia, and they stop like, fanning the flames, they're going to continue to sink, unfortunately. And the reason for that is because Russia is their cheapest energy supplier. And if you want to be competitive and manufacture goods, then you need cheap energy. And in the UK, right now, you have some analysts and some politicians saying that the UK government may need to apply for an emergency IMF bailout loan, which is something they have not done since the 1970s when, their economy wound up, in a depression. So, it's important for people to realize that their cost of debt right now is even higher than our cost of debt. And they're going all in. They're the main ones championing the war against Russia, right? So while we did have a meeting between Trump and Putin the other day, that seemed to be mostly for publicity because since then, what's happened is there's been no substantial progress on either side bending on any of the points that people need to bend on for the war to end. So it feels like, and right now the UK and France are talking, I'm sorry, the UK, France, and Germany are all volunteering, saying they want to send troops into Ukraine as their economies are all tanking like at the same time. Like instead of trying to figure out a way to reverse their own economic decline and restart that cheap energy pipeline, they're going all in and they're trying to waste the last of their money on war. So I don't know. It's not looking good for the UK and Germany in particular right now because they're like Germany was a big manufacturer, famous for cars, and a few other items. And since this war has, started up and we've cut off their cheap energy supplies through all these sanctions and blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline, they're deindustrializing. Their factories are closing down. Like it's getting more expensive for businesses to stay open. And, Germany is the economic engine of the EU. If Germany goes down, the EU is in problems. And right now, Germany is on the way down. So, what does all this mean for America? Well, Trump has declared BRICS to be the number one enemy, but their economies are rising. We're allied with economies that are tanking, even though they were wealthy before, but now they have excessive GDP levels, excessive debt to GDP levels. So, what other way? What other plan can I see us like? There's either two options. Either we work with BRICS or we're going to team up with Europe and essentially try to bring down BRICS and destroy the world so we can try to maintain our position of power. The only way we get better is if BRICS is worse off than us under the current plan. But it doesn't have to be that way. We could easily partner with BRICS and work with those countries and, transition to a multipolar world. But the people backing Trump and the people backing Biden, who are the same people, they have an all or nothing mentality. And all they're doing is they're managing the resistance to their policies by pretending that Trump is somehow different on Ukraine, in my opinion.
So here's the article from the Telegraph. You were mentioning that Britain is heading towards an IMF bailout. Economists warn of his 1970 style debt crisis unless the chancellor changes course, which it doesn't seem like they are. Like you said, Jay, it sounds like they're going all in on this war with Russia, and they're not going to change courses. It says Rachel Reeves' tax and spend gamble is driving Britain towards a 70s style debt crisis and bailout from the International Monetary Fund. The leading economists have warned. They said the chancellor's handling of the economy risks a return to the years of high inflation and borrowing that ended with Britain being forced to borrow billions from the IMF 50 years ago. Came as leading retailers sounded the alarm over the rising cost of taxes and red tape, which is pushing the country into an era of stagflation. On Saturday, Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, the economic situation was like the 70s all over again. While the Conservative Party leader said that the surging cost of government was the price of economic mismanagement.
And if I could jump in, right there, that's a perfect example of controlled opposition, because Nigel Farage is the leader of the Reform Party over there, which is like the third party that's surging. And if you ask him, well, what's the biggest problem with the direction the country is going? He has one answer: immigrants. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
And all this stuff we're doing with Russia and Ukraine, he doesn't speak on it that much. And when he does, he generally won't criticize it too hard. So what that tells me is that he realizes it may or may not be popular, but he's not going to go against it. And he's signaling to the establishment that if you let me get into power, which he might, he's going to stick on the same course. So, there isn't, the UK, unfortunately, doesn't, I don't know if Jeremy Corbyn, his party will pick up any steam or not, but both parties over there, all three of those parties are tanking in popularity right now. The economy's getting worse, and they're not calling out, like, throughout this whole article. I don't think Russia is mentioned once.
No, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They're not even mentioning,
and it's a key part of it, because it rises the cost of living, and they're spending money on it because Russia was their source of cheap energy.
Right. And you guys can see how the borrowing costs just keep going up and up. And we have the same issue here, obviously. this is not sustainable. This is what we like to say. Look, I'm not an economic, genius here, or like Matt, like I can't, but I'm telling you, like, when we look at these graphs with these exponential growths, like at some point, what are you going to do? Like, it doesn't, to me, it's like it's not a sustainable method. What's happening? Yeah.
And do you know why the cost is going up, Matt? Like, do you know why that's happening? Because investors trust these governments less. Because if I'm going to lend you money, Matt, and I'm fairly sure that you're going to pay me back, it's not really a big risk. So I don't have to charge you a ton of interest. But if you try to borrow money from me and I know you've never paid me back before, that's a bigger risk. But if you really need the money, you'll say, Jay, if you just lend me this $20, I'll give you 40 back. Like, you got to pay a higher interest rate if you have lower credit ratings. And our credit ratings in the Western world in general are all tanking right now, because our borrowing, all we're doing is we're taking out more credit cards to pay off the credit cards we already have. And our total credit card bill is already far past what we make every year. And, that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. Well, since the Telegraph didn't want to mention Russia, we're going to bring up Russia, because it's all connected, man. It's all connected. Here's that quote unquote deal that's not really happening at all, but there has been a little bit of a shift here. So let's start with this part. CBS reports that Putin has agreed to let the U.S. Europe offer NATO-style protections for Ukraine.
They're just making it up. There is no Russian source that's confirmed this stuff. All that's happening is we're in two different silos. In Russia, the Russian media is telling their people, we're not conceding, we're gonna win this war. In the West, our media is telling our people, oh, don't worry, Putin's hurting, he's gonna give in eventually, and if he doesn't, he's the problem why we can't have peace, and all this is unprovoked. And these are the two narratives that are going on. Like, it's two completely different narratives in each country, but the reality is Putin And no official from the Russian government has ever come out and said that they would allow NATO troops in Ukraine. And I personally don't believe it, because that's the whole reason they started the war. They want to keep NATO out of Ukraine. So
no, I think that there's no way there's going to be a deal without Ukraine agreeing not to be in NATO. There's absolutely no way. We were saying that from the effing beginning, Jay. So like that, we know that part. But as far as who's willing to come to the table now, it does seem like Zelensky's putting up more of a fight and having these little, like, spasm attacks about, I'm not going to do it unless this, and this. And I think that Russia's, between the two sides, are more cooperative and like, let's just get together and talk these things out. But you're right that this is just one side. Our state media telling us one thing, Russia's state media telling them another thing. But and make no mistake, people are tuning into, NBC's doing Meet the Press, and they're going to do everything they can to continue the spin that Russia is the one that's being unreasonable. Russia's the one that's bombing indiscriminately and doing all these horrible things to U.S. companies. Well, let's see what happened over the weekend, because things got interesting, Jay. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov actually goes on NBC on Sunday to talk with Kristen Welker with Meet the Press. And it's very interesting what happened. I got a couple clips from this, but I'm going to play the first one. And let's play. This one's a little longer one. I'm just going to watch. You guys watch this, because we could have put this on Real Fake News as well. Watch how Kristen Welker behaves, and watch how Sergei Lavrov calls her out for her horrible journalism as he's trying to explain where Putin is right now and the parameters of where we are moving forward. Check this out.
This week, Russia bombed an American-owned factory near the Hungarian border. I've spoken to people who frankly see that as a slap in the face to President Trump, to the entire peace process, isn't it?
Well, I would say that those who are sincerely interested in understanding what is going on should know by now that never ever Russia deliberately targeted any sites which are not linked to military abilities of Ukraine.
This is an electronics factory, though, sir. This is an electronics factory. I've spoken to people on the ground there. It builds coffee machines, among other electronics. This is not a military site.
Well, I understand that some people are really naive, and when they see a coffee machine in the window, they believe that this is the place where coffee machines are produced.
What a great line. When people see coffee machines in a window, their ignorance informs them that that's where coffee is made.
There's no gambling in this establishment, sir.
Yeah.
There's no gambling in this establishment.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. Like, yo, listen.
Yeah.
And, for her to frame the question like that, right? Instead of, hey, are you guys upset yet that we haven't declared war on you, but we're launching missiles at you and just pretending it's Ukraine doing it? Are you guys upset about that yet? Because we've attacked your energy infrastructure and we've hit at your factories, but now that you're hitting back, I'm going to frame the question as, oh, this is a slap in the face of the peace process. Like, why is it that we're like, the Ukraine war wouldn't be happening right now if we weren't powering it? So for her to frame the question as, oh, why are you guys so aggressive? This whole thing is happening because of us. Like, just look at the history, man. So it's hilarious. And, I love his answer there, because it's like, hey, man.
And there's more. There's more.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there's more. He's going to give her more of a lesson. And this is not just for her. This is for the audience who has to watch their Meet the Press. They got to get their kick on. They got to get their Meet the Press fix every Sunday. They're going to be taught a lesson here. Listen to what he's saying. They let him talk, but she's in over her head. She's out of her league here. Watch this.
Intelligence has very good information. And we target only, as I said, either military enterprises, military sites, or industrial enterprises directly involved in producing military equipment for Ukrainian army. And on the contrary, I never recall any concern expressed by the media in the West regarding the activities of Ukrainian armed forces when they, for example, in the Kursk region, when they invaded it one year ago, there is no military targets at all. All the targets which they have been hitting daily are civilian. They, by the way, took civilian hostages from there who had nothing to do with the conflict. Recently, they undertook the third attempt to blow up the Crimean bridge. They attacked a few days ago another nuclear power station. They used to attack the one in Zaporizhia. Now they attacked the nuclear power station in Smolensk. And they continue to do this. They continue to exercise terrorist attacks.
So this is, and she's going to try and push back, and she's going to do a horrible job at it. But just listen to that laundry list of deceitful, horrible stuff the Ukraine side's doing. He listed it one by one. What did she come prepared? I don't know if she came prepared for this interview. And he had every bullet point there, and he's saying it in very, very matter of fact and very, to put together. And this is the way Putin behaves too. We have this very calm demeanor as we state facts one after the next. What is she going to do with it? This is a lesson to anyone watching, and the Western media machine, which behaves the opposite. It's about stirring up people. It's about, accelerating conflict, and it's about making things worse than it was before you got there. This is what it's not de-escalation. It's always escalation when it comes to a Western media. So let's hear her try and push back at this.
There is no other way to call them.
So Mr. Foreign Minister,
but if you believe that if there is American capital in an enterprise which is used to produce weapons to kill Russians, and you believe that, be it American, be it Hungarian, be it anybody's capital, that this gives impunity to those who build weapons to kill us? I don't think so. I don't think this is fair. This is kind of, I would say, imperialistic.
Mr. Foreign Minister, just to confirm, you are confirming that Russia did in fact target and attack the American-owned company that was hit this week.
Look, you should be professor in the Soviet universities, because you twisted very interestingly what I said. I did not say that I confirmed that incident. I never heard of it. I just asked a rhetorical question. Do you believe that if there is an enterprise producing weapons and being part of the Ukrainian military machine, intended to produce things to kill Russian citizens, and just because this enterprise happened to have some American capital in it, it should be immune? That was my question. I have not heard about the episode, and if you can send me some reference to this incident to which you referred, I would look at.
So he's saying, I was giving you a hypothetical based on a morality element to see if you think it's okay that somebody gets a free pass in a circumstance like this. He didn't confirm anything, and she goes, "Oh, so you're confirming?" So she's not doing the job you're supposed to do. So he just called that out, and that's basically how our Western media.
Well, I mean, it's obvious, Matt. She's not interested in anything he has to say. The only reason she had him there was so she could talk down to him and then pull a clip from it to say, "Look how evil Russia is." There, like, if me and you are having a conversation, right? And I ask you a question and you give me an answer and I don't acknowledge anything in your answer. And then I just go back to repeating the same point I had before. How is that a conversation? How is that a conversation or an interview at all? And, they have no interest in getting to the truth. That's not what they're there for. We talk about this all the time. They're a propaganda machine. So all they care about is getting that clip of them
Yeah.
talking down to the Russian minister. And that's actually part of the reason why Russia doesn't like engaging in the media. And I wish they could find another way around it, because I love seeing them talk to the media, to be honest with you. I think they should do it more often.
It's
but
very enjoyable. It'd be
yeah.
nice if he came on like back in 2022, and kind of explain. Like we didn't see enough of that. You're right, and it sucks because her job is to manufacture consent. Her job is to get everybody to get Ukraine flags in their social media, which
get them pissed off
at
Russia.
She actually did her job well. He's educating. Him talking there educates the audience that there's something she's doing that's very nefarious on purpose. It's not that she's bad at her job. She's very good until she gets called out. So yes, I wish there were more of these Russian heads going on Western TV and spelling it out for the audience. But make no mistake, she is doing exactly her job, which is to rile people up, manufacture consent. Putin's the next Hitler. That was always the plan. If you don't do that, then people are going to question, wait, what are we giving our money to? What the hell are we doing in Ukraine? It's very weird. What are we doing? Well, no. Get in line, put your social media to yellow and blue, and shut up, because we have to stop Hitler.
Yep. So, keep that Ukrainian flag flying. So yeah, that's the only reason he's there. And, it's such a shame, man, because if the Russian position isn't hard to understand, it's really not that hard to understand. It's just a question of exposing people to the facts. But unfortunately, we're at the point now where people will disagree with something just because the Russian said it. If it comes from the Russian administration, can't be true. It's all a lie.
So there's one more clip from that interview that I think is pretty important, and it's about Russia's assessment of Zelensky from a legal perspective, which is very important if we're talking about sitting at a table and signing paperwork, which ultimately is going to have to happen. There has to be, at some point, there has to be an exchange, signatures on a page, even if we all know that we break all of our deals, right? We break the Minsk Accord, we break everything, but there has to be something signed at some point. And what is being said is Zelensky might not be legally the guy that is going to sit down and sign paperwork with us, because he's not legitimately the president. It's a pretty intense moment, because I don't think anybody on NBC was expecting him to say this. So here we go.
Legitimacy is another matter, because irrespective of when this meeting might take place, and it must be very well prepared, the issue of who is going to sign the deal on Ukrainian side is a very serious issue.
So you're saying you don't see President Zelensky as the legitimate leader of Ukraine? President Putin doesn't recognize him as the legitimate leader of Ukraine?
No, we recognize him as de facto head of the regime. And in this capacity, we are ready to meet with him. But when it comes to signing legal documents, now you want to have the entire picture, just part of it, which suits you. When we come to a stage when you have to sign documents, we would need a very clear understanding by everybody that the person who is signing is legitimate. And according to the Ukrainian constitution, Mr. Zelensky is not at the moment.
According to the Ukrainian constitution, Zelensky is not the legitimate president. He is the leader of this regime, as he says, by de facto. He's willing to meet with him, but not sign paperwork. What do you say back to that? I don't have her reaction on this clip, but what is your reaction, Jay Scott?
Yeah, so they're clearly just making a legal argument because Zelensky has put off elections, and he's, using the war to essentially prolong his power. But let's not forget, for the Ukrainian people, I do want to give the Ukrainian people a little bit, some credit here, right? Because when Zelensky was campaigning, he campaigned on ending the war with Russia. Before he got elected, he said he was going to make peace with Russia. He would make some concessions and we would get it done. That was his campaign. And then when he got elected, he took the country full steam, into war, right? And now he hasn't held an election since then, since he made that decision. So I understand, where he's coming from. Me personally, I don't know if legally Zelensky has the right to suspend it or not. However, I can understand the argument that what if 15 years from now there's different leadership in Ukraine and they're like, oh, well, that deal we signed with Russia doesn't count because there wasn't a real election at the time and Zelensky wasn't the legitimate leader. So we're no longer going to abide by this and we're going into NATO. And all he's saying is, hey, I'm not saying we can't get around this, but we have to have protections to ensure that this does not come back to bite us in the butt, because we see a legal argument when we look at Ukrainian laws that say that Zelensky is not the president. So if you were a NATO and you wanted peace, you could say, okay, well, how about this, Putin? You don't think he's president? What if we all get together and, pass a legally binding resolution that will never allow Ukraine into NATO? They could make a counter proposal like that. They won't do it. So, he isn't saying that we can't negotiate with Zelensky. He's saying there's questions about whether or not he should still be running this country. And we don't want to end the war and sign a deal that is then overturned, because it essentially allows Ukraine the time to just rearm and get back to where they were. And that's what we've done every single time. We've gone back on our word. We don't abide by the deal. We use the time to arm the people, and then it comes back and bites Russians in the butt. And Putin has actually been under serious pressure from his political opponents to stop going soft on the West. In America, in Russia, a lot of them think that Putin is going soft on Ukraine. And so that's why when everyone says, oh, we need to get rid of Putin, because that then we'll be able to have peace. I don't even know if that's the case. I think Putin is a very rational actor. You might not agree with him, but he seems to be transparent with his decision making and his actions, and you can understand why he's doing the things he's doing, even if you don't agree with it.
Okay, let me take a moment to introduce you to our good friends over at World Harvest Food Bank right here in LA. World Harvest has been serving families across Los Angeles for 18 years now, and they started with this simple idea. Everyone deserves access to healthy, affordable food no matter what they're going through. With their Cart with a Heart program, families can walk away with a full cart of groceries, fresh produce, dairy, meat, and pantry supplies for just a $50 contribution. That's for the entire cart. That same cart would cost over $300 at a typical grocery store. At World Harvest, everyone is welcome. They don't ask for income verification, ID, or any paperwork. No. Basically, their doors are open to anyone who's doing their best, but just needs a little extra push to get by. If you're an Angelino like me, you know the times have been tough here. First with all the union strikes, the LA fires, and now the ICE raids going on. It seems like we're living in a constant state of uncertainty. And that's why it's so important to support local charities like World Harvest, because they aren't just helping the community. They're an essential function in its very survival. World Harvest is located at Venice and Arlington. And right now, you can use our special discount code THL20 for 20% off your contribution amount at checkout. And if you're not in the LA area, you can still help out with a $50 donation, which will provide a full cart of food for a family by going to worldharvestfoodbank.org or scan the QR code for more info. Or you can just spread the word. Follow them online. Let people know they're here for them, because at the end of the day, it's about providing choice, access, and relief without barriers. World Harvest Food Bank. End hunger now.